talks, and we'll know definitely soon.
I don't want war with anybody, but we're prepared more than anybody. With all of that being said, we'd certainly like to avoid it.
On Sunday, the president tweeted the U.S. was locked and loaded. The president talked up the economy, talked down Democrats, and defended Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh in a rally Monday evening in suburban Albuquerque. Leaving the White House for that event, the president bashed the New York Times for a Sunday op-ed piece that suggested there was another previously unreported sexual misconduct allegation against Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
I think the New York Times made another terrible mistake. It's a shame that a thing like that could happen. I see they're making a big correction today. They've just announced there's a correction.
The paper actually issued a clarification, making it clear that the woman, who the two reporters said may have been sexually assaulted, doesn't remember such an event and declined to speak with them. For the second time in a year, the political fate of one of the president's closest foreign allies is on the line in an election on Tuesday.
It's the first time Israel has held two general elections in a calendar year. The vote called after a surprise failure by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to build a coalition government following the first election in April. Netanyahu has made a series of nationalist pledges on the campaign trail, including vowing to annex all Jewish settlements in the West Bank if re-elected, a plan condemned by Palestinian leaders. Opinion polls suggest the election is too close to call.
Fox's Simon Owen. General Motors and the UAW talked well into the evening Monday, but no settlement yet in the strike by 49,000 UAW members. It started Sunday night. America is listening to Fox News.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hafa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
A police officer has died in a line of duty in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Officer Darnell Cousette pursued a wanted suspect into a home there. They traded shots. Both men were hit. The officer later died from his injuries. Tuscaloosa Mayor Walt Maddox says the officer was a hero.
As we hug our loved ones and we think about those who are dear in our life, let us give thanks for the heroes of the Tuscaloosa Police Department. Let us give thanks for Investigator Cousette.
The suspect survived the shooting. He is being treated. A huge explosion shattered a building in Farmington, Maine on Monday. Lisa Charles, who worked there but was across the street at the time, says her coworkers managed to get out safely.
I got a warning from the maintenance guy, and who is a hero, and he told them to evacuate because they smelled the propane.
After the evacuation, Farmington firefighters went in to investigate. Then the building exploded, killing one firefighter, injuring 4 others. First hearing is set for Tuesday, that is, for the bankruptcy filing for OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma for its role in the opioid crisis. The melted core from the 3 Mile Island accident of 40 years ago may stay buried in Idaho.
The U.S. Energy Department is seeking a license extension to keep that core stored at the site that includes the Idaho National Lab. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission says there will be no major impact from keeping that core at the location. Still, the Energy Department would have to submit a safety evaluation report to secure the renewal, which would be good for another 20 years. The most recent license expired last March. If the material did have to be moved, it's not certain where it would be stored. The U.S. does not have another dedicated space to store that kind of material. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Monday Night Football, Cleveland Browns beat the New York Jets 23-3. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Chili's Guam invites you to our new location, now open on the second floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. For the past 10 years, we have made Guam our home and celebrated moments with our familia and friends. From birthdays to first dates, anniversaries, and everything else in between. We're keeping it going with our new location where you can hang out with family and friends over fajitas, burgers, ribs, and margaritas. Treat yourself to an elevated guest experience at Chili's like no place else. Now open on the second floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, new location, same bold flavors.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, September 17th. I'm Daryl Taggarty. I'm sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who will be back in 20 days. That's right. From being in the 60s, now we're down to 20, and we'll be in the teens by tomorrow. And that is the expected return of Bob Klitzkie to this very chair and this very time slot coming up in just a scant 2 weeks plus. So thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon, and let's see what's shaken today. I didn't check. Let's see. I might be able to do this. I'll see if Bob has sent me anything. I was rushing around doing some stuff just before coming into the station, and so we'll see if he's got something to suggest for the Second Amendment part. I guess not. I'm having some trouble yesterday, and that'll just be that. I understand from a couple of news reports I read just before coming in that the discussions between the White House and Congress on what would be acceptable elements of a gun control bill, they don't have agreement on. And so we're not expecting, as of today, we're not expecting anything to come out of Congress on gun control. And that's the latest. So we'll just go right into Zami Ikatni. And we've got a couple of editorials, but actually today the Guam Daily Post editorial is taxpayers pay a lot to ensure GovGuam workers we can't shell out anymore. And then with PDN, their editorial is HHS, FDA, CDC, vaping oversight is a top concern by USA Today. But I'm not going to get into that. I just... yes, vaping is a concern. It's a public health concern. And there are procedures, and that's why they're talking about HHS, Health and Human Services, FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, all already empowered to examine the kinds of commercial products that people would ingest, either eat or smoke or take as supplements, vitamins, different kinds of practices herbal supplements, things like that, right? Health claims, or items that appear to give you, untoward health effects, diseases, imported diseases, emerging diseases, rare equine flu. I mean, really, it's like, why would we have to worry about that? But those are the agencies who are already supposed to stay on top of this. And if there is something to be had from the scientific community and from the government, it's going to come from those three agencies. And so we'll just leave well enough alone until they let us know exactly what. If that is what they're going to sound as an alarm, it's not going to be, this is Secretary of Health and Human Services, Acting Commissioner of Food and Drug Administration, and Director of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It's a joint article. Yeah, maybe I will go ahead and read it. But let's go ahead and take a look at this first. Taxpayers pay a lot to insure GovGuam workers. We can't shell out anymore. And this is Guam Daily Post editorial on page 24 today. Many taxpayers whose households don't rely on a government of Guam paycheck have a general idea they're helping shoulder the burden of paying the health insurance of GovGuam's approximately 12,000 health plan members. But for exactly how much taxpayers will be on the hook to pay GovGuam health insurance this year remains unknown. Even after GovGuam chose Aetna International, recently acquired by pharmaceutical giant CVS Health, to provide the 2020 health insurance plan for GovGuam's retirees, employees, and their dependents, the public hasn't been given the courtesy of at least an estimate of the cost. The exact figure won't be available until after the open enrollment period ends. Open enrollment will take place between September 23rd and October 12th. In previous budget years, however, and as part of the budget process, GovGuam, even before or right after the selection of health plan contractors, was more transparent about the estimated cost. In fiscal 2017, GovGuam paid $76 million. This year's estimates have varied from $80 million to $90 million. The requirement as part of Guam law that GovGuam's health insurer must include coverage at the private hospital, Guam Regional Medical City, will not be free of charge. Taxpayers have been paying a hefty price to insure GovGuam employees, dependents, and retirees. A report released by the Office of Public Accountability last year states GovGuam, and by extension taxpayers, paid 79% of the $347 million cost of GovGuam's health insurance program over 4 years through fiscal 2017. In contrast, the private sector's employees and managers are on their own. GovGuam doesn't help. The employees and managers in the private sector can consider themselves lucky if their employers shoulder more than 50% of the health insurance premium. And workers who hold part-time jobs in stores, restaurants, and hotels are lucky if they can get some semblance of health insurance through their jobs. Shifting GovGuam from multiple health insurance companies to just one, Aetna International, is expected to ease the cost. That was the idea of the law requiring the government to choose only one health insurance provider. However, some under GovGuam's health plan want more. In recent days, many of them have signed a petition to give them a choice of insurers. We, the taxpayers, can't have those we've hired to serve us continue to add costs that we will ultimately carry on our backs. If a single health insurance provider saves costs, then GovGuam members shouldn't be asking for more, especially at the expense of the rest of us. If GovGuam members want something better and more expensive, they should pay for it out of their own pockets. And, you know, as a former GovGuam employee and a current GovGuam retiree, I have to say, I was pretty shocked when I saw that letter from Select Care asking us to sign a petition to reverse the law basically it would be for the legislature to repeal the law that requires only the award of the GovGuam contract to only one insurer, as if multiple insurers was going to be beneficial to either the patients or the enrollees or the government, meaning you, the taxpayer. No, it's only to keep a share of the pie, to keep money flushing through their accounts. That's the only winner. And yeah, I can see why. I think the last count was like 900 people had signed up. Because normally during open enrollment, you're told, oh, you've got only this choice of providers. Because that's how it's been for the last how many years. Between the different health insurers, some would not associate with, and some doctors, some clinics would not be associated with one or the other health insurance company. Like, for example, FHP, Take Care, would have FHP Clinic and not SDA Clinic. Now that we have two hospitals under Take Care, they did not want to recognize or send their patients to GRMC, and that's a private matter. That is for businesses to figure out on their own. If it works on their business plan, then good, they can enter into it. But when it is a public contract for public employees with public money as a public benefit, then it's all of our business as taxpayers to have a say on this. And yes, as long as you're going to give GovGuam employees pay raises and increments to keep their salaries up to, they're indexed to some level over the years, then perhaps they should be paying more of the share of their own health insurance. I think it's a great benefit because it's so inexpensive. There are expensive. It used to be that, when you had more than one health insurance company offering, each one would put their own cost on the table. Our coverage will cost this for the different classes. So a retiree or an employee would then look at the pricing and look at the levels and look at the choice of healthcare provider as far as the clinics and doctors, and then choose accordingly what they can afford, according to and what they want as far as their needs. But from last year to this year, there is no difference because Netcare includes all of them. So if you were to cut that award by, let's say, a third, so that 1/3 of GovGuam employees, 3,200, stay with Select Care, then the GovGuam, they're not bidding against each other. They're just having a smaller piece of the pie. And it appears that the editorial doesn't oppose GovGuam workers having a choice of insurer if it wouldn't cost the taxpayers any more. But that was tried under the previous law when any qualified insurer could compete for enrollees. And what happened is the savings went to the enrollee, the employee, because the government of Guam said, we will only support, let's say, $13.82. Other than that, you pay everything over it. And the different health insurance companies would set their rates. And so as an employee, I would say, okay, I can afford this additional bite out of my paycheck in order to get access to that clinic and that doctor for my kids and my wife and me. So, but there isn't any advantage to doing that this time with a single provider. This year, under the new law, only one company would be selected as provider. No one would have to change doctor or clinic or hospital because the local Netcare network includes all of them. Now OPA, BJ Cruz, explained the savings to GovGuam by having a single provider. Now, I don't remember the details, but it was his bill that put this all in motion. It's just being implemented now this year. But those cost savings can easily be negotiated away. There's an article on page 1 of the Guam Daily Post today by Kevin Kerrigan entitled GovGuam Health Insurance Cost Still Unclear. And I'm going to talk about this in the next segment of the show in some detail. I mentioned it this morning on Ray's program. I started the topic and he invited me to just continue here. And so do stay tuned for that. You know, what could they be discussing when the difference is between 78 million and 90 million? I mean, how did Aetna win the bid if the cost wasn't laid out? How can they still be negotiating? Which is the end of the article. There's so much more to the story, and it's going to be tomorrow's news or the next day's news, but it'll be a done deal. The ink will have been put to paper, and you and I will be committed to it. And I'll talk about some of the other sides, like what is this money going to be spent on, and what kind of structure would it support? And so let's take a look at the HHS, FDA, CDC vaping oversight as a top concern. Because it's written by the heads of each of these agencies, and for the three of them to get together and write a joint article, this is pretty striking. I kind of wish that PDN would simply refer to it and write its own, about vaping on Guam. But be that as it may, as three of the nation's leading public health officials, we are deeply concerned about the epidemic of youth e-cigarette use, and we are using every tool we have to protect the public, especially kids, from tobacco-related disease and death. Any opportunity for electronic cigarettes to serve as an off-ramp for individual addicted adult cigarette smokers must not come at the expense of children. We'll take every step necessary to prevent these products from becoming an on-ramp to nicotine addiction for a generation of youth. Right now, we are working tirelessly across federal, state, and local health agencies to investigate the distressing incidents, including 2 recent deaths, of respiratory illnesses associated with vaping. Getting to the bottom of this is a top priority across the Department of Health and Human Services. Getting to the bottom is the top. Okay. The Food and Drug Administration and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are providing all necessary resources to gather and analyze information about the products used, where they were obtained, and whether they contain nicotine, substances like THC, or other chemicals. Anyone who uses vaping products should avoid buying products off the street, avoid using ones containing THC oil, and refrain from modifying or adding substances to products purchased in stores. More broadly, we remain committed to our oversight of e-cigarettes and to keeping them out of the hands of youth. For example, FDA warning letters resulted in the market removal of dozens of e-liquids resembling kid-friendly juice boxes, cereal, and candy. We've already imposed requirements on manufacturers, including submitting product and ingredient lists and placing a warning about nicotine's addictiveness on packages and ads. We'll continue using all of our tools as appropriate to protect kids, including enforcement action and penalties. And we've put the industry on notice. If the disturbing rise in youth e-cigarette use continues, we'll take even more aggressive action. And I like that. I like that. I like that that we have agencies concerning adulterated products and health effects of the open market, and they are stepping up to their responsibilities. So I'm happy to see that. Between the two articles, though, I am going to just offhand disqualify the non-local editorial in the PDN because it's non-local, and we need this is good. We know that the feds are working on vaping issues, and I assume that locally it would start to trickle down, and our local agencies would as well, and people generally should be aware of it. But I think for sounding the alarm on watching out for what is the bottom line cost to taxpayers for insuring GovGuam workers. This is a benefit. This is the cost of a benefit of being employed. So not only are they employed and have civil service protections and have indexed income and have competitive incomes as if they were competing for the jobs. Now, in some professions they are. Teachers, nurses, scientists, social workers, attorneys. The government of Guam needs to compete with wages and benefits for those for people to fill those technical positions. But many positions in the government of Guam are not, but they are indexed. The salaries are indexed, and the retirement benefits are generous, and it's a 30-year lifetime employment. And this is all without actually looking at whether the government of Guam needs people in that same position for 30 years. There's no way to get people out. They just have to be retained, and there's no method short of a government reorganization and some reductions in force and savings on personnel so that there can be a budget for maintenance and capital tools. But that's what the budget process is supposed to be about. But for today's article, for today's Guam Daily Post, to sound the alarm on this and get us all sensitized to watch what's going on with the cost to us of making sure the benefits for GovGuam workers stay high. I want to give the Guam Daily Post the coveted blue star today. I know it looks black, but it's blue. See, they deserve it because it's a difficult subject to talk about, but it's done respectfully, and it does put us all on notice that we, taxpayers, whether or not we have insurance, are buying insurance for 11,000 employees, plus their families and retirees, GovGuam retirees, to the tune of somewhere around $90 million, which is about 1/10, maybe a little under 1/10 of the total government of Guam budget, just for the benefits, not for the salaries. And that's only part of the medical sector on Guam. That's only the GovGuam insurance purchase. And that's not including, well, they collect the employee contributions, and then they push it back out to the company. But they collect those almost like revenues, almost like tax. And then they pay the health insurance companies as the total premium payment. That's quite a big contract. And GovGuam is a portion, GovGuam's budget is a portion of that overall authorized payout. And so, congratulations, Guam Daily Post, and thank you for that editorial. And so I'm going to, it's 4:30. Real Joe, let's take a break here, and we'll come back on the other side with more Tall Tales.
Whether you're going grocery shopping, taking the kids to the mall, or going to work, you need a reliable car that can take you where you need to go. A reliable car also needs reliable insurance. Let Nanbo Insurance make your auto insurance easy and uncomplicated. With Nanbo, you can also save big when you bundle up and insure your car, home, motorcycle, or business. Enjoy great savings up to 50%. Visit nanbo.com or call 477-9754 for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
We understand what matters to you because at Docomo Pacific, we're a family too. With the Now Family program, Mom, Dad, and kids stay connected on the latest devices the whole family can enjoy. For just $155 a month, get 3 lines with 30 gigs of 4G LTE data each, and endless use of your favorite apps without affecting your monthly data bucket. Add more, get more, save more. Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Try their featured special for September. Shrimp hash crusted parrotfish, succulent parrotfish fillets crusted with a shrimp farce, twice cooked, served over basil lace sweet potato croquet, and a crab corn bisque sauce. Visit Mescla in Agotya and now in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
And welcome back to Tall Tales. Just got myself set up here on the Facebook Live. You can watch us on Facebook Live. And if you see my comments, they're labeled as Bob Klitzkie because that's how this is assigned for this time slot, but it's me answering back. When I answer on my own laptop, it's on my own name. But here we have Margaret Bloss saying, Huffaday Daryl, happy Monday from California. Yeah, it's still Monday there, isn't it? We just finished watching the Monday Night Football game. Nate Horn is there, and I've got a caller hanging on line 1. Ken Leongrero says single provider option was $21 million cheaper in 2017. Hence, BJ's bill in 2018 mandating lowest cost provider. So the estimate, if they had gone to a single provider option, they would have saved $21 million in the year fiscal 2017. That's according to Ken online. So thank you, Ken, for that information. Ken's been following a number of issues pretty closely, and we'll be linking up with him coming up in the next couple of shows to talk about some things he's got going. So thank you for your perspectives there. And let's see. So I don't have a caller, right? Real Joe? Okay. Caller dropped off. Let's, what I got started, well, before we continue here, I just want to ask you whether you saw this in the paper today, in the PDN. I didn't write down where this appeared, and it's not credited to any one reporter, but the headline is $990 million joint military contract for Guam work. It's not really, but let me go ahead and read this out. 5 companies were awarded a combined $990 million contract for construction to be done primarily at Andersen Air Force Base, according to a Department of Defense announcement. And then there are companies awarded are Black Construction, Two-Door Perini JV of Harmon, Cortec, HDCC, Kajima LLC of Tamuning, Hensel Phelps Construction of Honolulu, Gilbane SMCC ECC LLC of Concord, California, and Cadell Nan JV of Montgomery, Alabama. I believe just one of them is Gilbane SMCC ECC LLC is awarded $22,997,004 for the design and construction of a low-rise combined dining and high-intensity tactical training facility for aviation combat element at Anderson Air Force Base. I love it when they do this in the story. Low-rise, high-intensity in the same, modifying the same, the same item, the same noun. But it's not altogether here. It says all work will be on the contract will be performed primarily within the Naval Facilities Pacific region. 80% of the work will be done on Guam. So just right off the top, take out $198 million from that. So we're really talking about 700 some million for Guam. 10% in the Commonwealth and Northern Mariana Islands. So 99 million is headed up to in the north. That's a big contract to let. And 5% in Hawaii, 5% in other areas in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. And it's all new construction. Oh, it's new construction, renovation, and minor construction. Barracks, administrative facilities, communication facilities, educational facilities, medical dental hospital facilities, dining facilities, industrial facilities, warehouse facilities, ranges, operational and training facilities, roads, streets, and bridges, site utilities and infrastructure, dredging, and aviation facilities, including hangars and aprons, and other base development. The term of the contract not to exceed 60 months, to be complete by 2024. So that's in the pipeline. Almost $1 billion of construction, and 80% of it for Guam over 5 years. So we're talking about $700 million over 5 years. That's not quite the usual $350 million a year, but it's an announcement. You can't really add these numbers up because there might be some overlap. And before we go further, before we dive back into the health care issue, there was a cartoon, 2 panels, and there's a fellow sitting in a big chair and looks something like Tip O'Neill, and he's saying to another fellow, and there's a poster on the wall, a belfry, and his slogan, "Trust me," and he's saying, "Remember, we don't have to fool all the people all of the time. Just the 30% who vote. If there's only a few voting, well, if only 30% of those eligible to vote actually show up to the polls, that's all the politicians have to concentrate on." I'm going to take this and attach it to my page in my journal of the day. Just too important to leave aside. So what was I talking about with GovGuam health insurance and the finances, and what will it cost? Well, let's see. Here's one at the very end of the article where it says, let's see the article on page 1 of the Guam Daily Post today. GovGuam health insurance cost is still unclear, the name of that article. The last paragraph reads, on the advice of legal counsel, it's Edward Byrne, the director of administration, said he could not provide any information about the projected cost of the Aetna health insurance contract, quote, because there are financial parts of the contract that have not been resolved. Well, you could sign a contract and then not have things resolved. A negotiation after it's signed or after it's been decided. Huh. What happens if they don't resolve them? Does Aetna walk away and give it back to the number 2 bidder? What might not be resolved? Let me see if I can suggest something that might not be resolved. The negotiated percentage that Aetna will pay GMH. And that's one part of the contract. If you haven't noticed, I'm going to get into this. Balance billing. For anyone who's gone to GMH but has insurance over the last 15, 20 years, you may have encountered this. Okay, so personally, I wasn't admitted, but I had 2 children, right, at GMH. My wife was the one who had to, saddle up. But before letting her go, I made my trip down to the patient records and patient affairs to get my billing. And of course, they handed me like 7-page billing, and I looked through it and I say, yeah, it looks okay, but why 7 pages of stuff? For 2 days in the hospital. That's okay. So that's okay, and I knew that I was going to have to pay so much of the calculation, but they said, don't pay anything now. We'll send you a bill. And I said, well, I got some money now, so let me just go ahead and put down, I wrote a check for, I don't know, $1,700 or whatever it was. And got my receipt. And then I didn't hear from them so I said, oh, it must be good. This is, what I expected to be my copay for the total stay. But no. Whatever it was that the insurance company didn't pay was tossed back to me to pay. So I get this bill saying, you owe us, it's $2,800. And I came back over. I said, for what? Can you show me where in my billing there's something that's not allowed? And they said, no, we can't tell you. We don't know. That's in your patient, that's in the medical record, but we can't tell you. I said, yeah, but you sent me the bill. They said, yeah, but we only know the total amount, and it came back as being short. What I found out, and it was left for me to pay. And they couldn't tell me what wasn't paid. And so I refused to pay it. And they said, well, we'll just drag it out of your tax return, your tax refund. I said, fine. I'll just pay my taxes, and then you can take it out of my tax refund, which they did over several years until I had another baby, and they did this thing again. So over a period of about 5 years, my tax refunds were garnished every year. But if they weren't going to tell me what I was paying, why should I pay it? And then I found out when I went over there and said, okay, so can you give me a statement showing me that my account is clear? The office could not do so. I had to bring in the receipts from Rev and Tax showing that I had completed paying these amounts and give them the copies, and they still wouldn't produce a statement for me. Now, because they weren't authorized to go in and credit my account. Now, how does anybody know whether that was the part that I had paid, ended up paying, was part of their sob story to the legislature about these self-pay people who don't pay? Because it was simply a transfer from Rev and Tax, but it was not being credited to my account. I was still showing as owing them. But they weren't coming after me because they had posted that out. And I gave them copies of all my Rev and Tax papers. But they still wouldn't give me a statement. Even months later, they wouldn't. Let's see what's shaking on line one. Line one, welcome to Tall Tales.
I'm sorry, Daryl. I missed that first part. You were requested to pay a bill because it had anything to do with your wife.
Well, I had health insurance. She gave birth. She was admitted to the hospital. Mother and baby fine. And when we leave, they hand me a bill and they say, this is the bill. I say, good. I know I have to pay a percentage. So let me go ahead and put down that money because I know that that's the percentage with the health insurance company. Now, there are reasons. I'm going to get into this in a moment. Why did they still send me, GMH still send me a bill? And I'll get to that after this phone call. But what's on your mind?
Oh, actually, I was just curious of why they were not giving you that information. It was freedom of information issue.
No. It wasn't. It's my own bill. What they said was that it's the business office. They just have a number, but the details are in my medical records, but they don't have access to the medical record because it's confidential under HIPAA. They can't transfer that data to the people that work in the accounting section. The accounting people are just there to keep track of the accounts, but they couldn't even keep track.
To your accounts?
But only a total number, and I found out that even the money that was garnished from my tax refund was not credited. It went to GMH because that's what it said from relevant tax documents, but it was not credited to my patient account until I went in and provided them documents, and they made copies and then said, okay, we'll take care of it.
Wait, is this standard operating procedure?
Apparently so, and I'll explain this further. There are two reasons for it. You want to hear it?
Should I just listen on?
Yeah. I'm gonna continue to discuss this and describe it. Thank you. Okay, we will continue. There are two reasons for this. One, I found out. I've known for years, and we've all known for years, and that is that if the charges that the hospital is making are not properly documented in the file that is presented within 30 days to the health insurance company, they will not honor them. Let's say there was a request for a lab result. So blood was taken, and then the results were called back up, and in the chart it shows what the results are. But the actual slip from the lab for that one procedure that's timed to the doctor's order and then the results, if that slip is not in the file, then the health insurance company would disallow it. So it depends on whether the filing clerks at medical records are doing their jobs accurately or not. And now I know what kind of a job this is because I used to do that myself for about 1.5 years in medical records in the States. It's one of my many jobs I've held. The other reason is that the health insurance companies sit down with GMH and negotiate as a provider. They negotiate a rate, and they say, we'll only pay how many percentage of what you bill us. Of legitimate fees, we're not going to pay 100%. We'll only pay 70%. And that was a figure I learned about later on. And that leaves the patient as a self-pay, even with insurance, self-pay for 30% of the total bill. Because even if it's documented and legitimate, included in your coverage, and even if they say, we pay 100% of your bill between the insurance company and the hospital, the insurance company is only paying 70%, and the hospital takes that form you signed when you checked in that says, I am responsible for all billings that my insurance company doesn't pay, which is a reasonable statement. And then they go after you with it. That's called balance billing. And balance billing is that negotiated arrangement or rate that leaves the insured policyholder stuck with medical bills that we assume are covered by the insurance company. 100% covered does not mean 100%. If the insurance company tells GMH it won't pay but a percentage of the bills presented, and the balance can be invoiced as self-pay against the patient. Remember the form you sign when you're admitted. You might get a bill months or years after discharge, but if you ask GMH, the staff cannot tell you exactly what the charges are for. They can tell you the date when it was incurred. They only know that the insurance didn't pay it. And this has been going on for decades and has been adding to the large outstanding self-pay, quote, self-pay balances. The unpaid self-pay. And much of it is recovered by tax return garnishments. Let's take a break here. We got a break, Real Joe, and then we'll come back to continue this on Tall Tales.
Everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird, bird.
Circle K has a 3-pound rotisserie chicken, now available for the introductory price of $9.99. It's the biggest, tastiest, and most affordable rotisserie chicken of its kind on island. Save even more by getting a family meal with 2 sides and a bottle of wine for only $25.99. The Circle K rotisserie chicken. Get yours today. Circle K. Take it easy.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Hey, welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm just wondering, do we have a caller on line 1? We do. Okay, let's go to line 1. I'll continue in just a few moments. We have plenty of time. Line 1, you're on the air with Tall Tales. Welcome.
How are you doing, sir?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Not bad.
I'm glad.
Why didn't you go back to your insurance provider and ask him why they did not pay GMH everything, since they said they will pay 100% of all services?
There are
pay GMH all the services.
That's right, but there's a burden here, and this is even coming from somebody who is as detail-oriented as I am and a researcher. There is no way to know whether GMH presented all of the bills to the insurance company in time, within 30 days. There is no way to know whether it was documented. The individual items were documented. The utilization review at the health insurance company, they go through stacks of these files every day to come up with a number, and they don't want to spend a whole lot of time on each file, and so they negotiate, because the hospital will go back and get it from you. That's all.
There's that part there that the insurance company should have told you that they will pay all services provided that the hospital gives them the billing within so many days. But they did not tell you that, right?
No, they don't.
They will pay all services.
Well, the thing is that there's one relationship, okay? That is the provider, the health insurance company has a contract with the government of Guam. I sign up for a policy under that contracted arrangement, which is what's going on right now between Aetna and the government of Guam. They're hammering out these details right now, today, as I'm speaking now. Well, you know, they're almost off, right? Almost 5. So they are hammering these details out, but it's between the health insurance company and Gov Guam. It's not with me. I sign up. I have there's a presentation that they give me that says this is what we're going to to pay. So far, so good. But in the relationship between the health insurance company and GMH, it says you must present a bill within 30 days of discharge. We will not consider anything after 30 days after the discharge. Now, this comes in very important for another aspect I'm going to discuss. There's several things here. I'm going to build this out because it's a really, really good way to see what GMH is about. And this is something I've been tracking for 30 years. Since I first ran the analysis on GMH. And the game hasn't stopped.
Yeah, according to the paper, there's about $109 million that's uncollectible, right?
Right, but that's for how many different reasons?
Yeah.
But that's why I'm trying to pull this ball of string out a little bit so we can see why it's so damn important to keep the hospital just as dysfunctional as it is. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
We'll get to this. Thank you, Tom. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so we'll continue. That was Tom, but thank you very much for inquiring about this. If you remember back when the old hospital was still standing, in that old hospital before it was torn down, just before it was torn down, and they'd moved mental health out and all that good stuff, right? There was a media tour. And somebody on that media tour was was tipped off to ask what was behind that one locked door. And what did they find? Because they insisted, open this door. We want to see what's in here. Because it's just otherwise a building ready to be torn down, right? And what did they find in that locked room? They found a 5-foot-high cone of unfiled documents, lab slips, medical records, unfiled, that had been just taken over there in boxes and piled up, not in boxes, but dumped out of the boxes so that it made a cone that was 5 feet high and about 8 feet wide, round, in the middle of the room. And they took pictures of it. Now, this is something that's already in your history, already in your media history, that hasn't been brought back up. And the legislature hasn't brought it back up in their oversight hearings. This is known. And that was, when you look at that pile of unfiled slips, those are all cash that didn't go to the health insurance company, didn't come out of the health insurance company, that they were legally on the hook for. Who benefits from this kind of a thing? Certainly the insurance company, because they're collecting premiums based on what their expected payout would be. And GMH, because they're going to ask the legislature for an appropriation to make up for the shortfall between what was billed and what was collected. And GMH medical records employees who don't have to perform with speed or accuracy. And who loses? The patient who gets a bill for something the insurance company didn't cover, and you, the taxpayer, because you're paying twice for the same inefficient service at GMH. And you've got the wool pulled over your eyes. And there's more to this, and I'll get into this after our break. We've got about a minute before 5 o'clock. We're going to enjoy what's shaken nationally on Fox News, and we're going to have a thrilling, I've told you this before, and it happens every weekday at a little bit after 5 o'clock. We have a thrilling halftime show. Stay tuned for that. And as soon as we're done with that, I'll be right here in this very chair waiting for you on the other side for more Tall Tales.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
World leaders gather in New York. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, for the General Assembly of the United Nations, which begins today.
All 193 member nations will come together for the 74th General Meeting to discuss matters of worldwide security, peace, and development, as outlined in the UN Charter. All nations will be heard, and their heads of state are invited to address the body as part of the general debate. President Trump will likely be one of the most anticipated speakers.
Fox's Gernal Scott. There had been some speculation that President Trump might sit down with Iran's President Rouhani at the General Assembly to talk over Middle East tensions, but that's off. Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, says there'll be no talks with the U.S. at any level. This after the president suggested Iran could be behind the weekend attack on a big oil refinery in Saudi Arabia.
We'll be meeting with Saudi Arabia. We'll be talking to Saudi Arabia. We'll be talking to UAE and many of the neighbors out there that we're very close friends with. We're also talking to Europe, a lot of the countries that we're dealing with, whether it's France, Germany, etc. Talking to a lot of different folks, and we're figuring out what they think. But I will tell you, that was a very large attack.
The president says he has no defense agreement in place with Saudi Arabia, but the U.S. is prepared to act if necessary. Iran denies any involvement in the refinery attack. President defending Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh at a rally in New Mexico Monday evening after the New York Times claimed that Kavanaugh could have been involved in a previously unreported sexual assault while in college.
They had to change their story. The woman said, I don't remember that. Okay, and they still want him to be impeached.
Paper later clarifying that the alleged victim says she doesn't remember any such encounter. The president calling for the Times to fire everyone who was involved putting that story together. America is listening to Fox News.
Chili's Guam invites you to our new location, now open on the second floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. For the past 10 years, we have made Guam our home and celebrated moments with our familia and friends. From birthdays to first dates, anniversaries, and everything else in between. We're keeping it going with our new location where you can hang out with family and friends over fajitas, burgers, ribs, and margaritas. Treat yourself to an elevated guest experience at Chili's like no place else. Now open on the second floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, new location, same bold flavors.
We can't buy this house.
What?
It has 4 bathrooms. Just think of all the bathtub rings, water spots, and stains, plus the cleaning products I'll have to buy.
Didn't I tell you? The house comes with a non-electric Connecticut water treatment system. We'll have clean, soft water throughout the house, protect the water-using appliances, keep the tub, showers, and sinks looking like new, and help our skin, hair, and clothes look and feel great, too. The house even includes a Connecticut drinking water system.
A Connecticut system in the house? We'll take it.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
President Trump wasn't the only one with a big rally for supporters on Monday.
Momentum for Senator Elizabeth Warren. Her campaign saying more than 20,000 supporters packed Washington Square Park here in downtown Manhattan to hear her speak, to hear her unveil her plan to end corruption in Washington, D.C. once and for all. Her version of draining the swamp.
I have a lifetime ban on senators, congressmen, and cabinet secretaries from ever being lobbyists. So let's shut this industry down and return our government to the people.
Warren unveiled the plan, a lengthy Medium blog post. She wants to create an Office of Public Integrity dedicated to investigating public ethics complaints against politicians.
Fox's Brian Yanis in New York. The bodies of 4 Florida children have been found in Georgia only hours after their mother was found murdered. The woman's husband arrested after leading police to the children's remains.
As a father, as a parent, it breaks my heart. As a sheriff, it angers me to no end. Something to this degree, how a human being could even do this.
That's Marion County, Florida Sheriff Billy Woods. The woman and her children had been reported missing from Marion County after relatives hadn't heard from them in several weeks. A police officer has died in the line of duty in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
In our community, our heroes wear the police uniform of Tuscaloosa Police Department. One of our heroes has died in the line of duty, protecting our city.
The city's mayor, Walt Maddox, says 40-year-old Officer Dornell Cousette died from gunshots he suffered Monday evening in a gun battle with a suspect he was pursuing. Suspect was also wounded. There's been another death blamed on vaping. Tulare County, California public health agencies say the unnamed patient died from the effects of using e-cigarettes. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Kelaguen Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
Are you ready for some football? The Ray Gibson Show has got your NFL fix every Friday on Sports with Blake. Get the latest updates as Blake and Mike break down the upcoming action. Get your game on with the boys on the hotline, 888-TALK, or sound off on Facebook Live at thepoint.gu. League members get a chance to win some awesome prizes that get you through the NFL season. The NFL Picks on the Ray Gibson Show is brought to you by Current Guam with special thanks to GTA.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
And welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm Daryl Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie. He's going to be back in 20 days. Yes, 20 days. But in the meantime, be tuning in, and I'll be here on weekday afternoons from 4 until 6. I didn't mention Zami Ikotny today. As of yesterday, the tally was Guam Daily Post 140 blue stars of not only approval but of kudos, and PDN 52. So today we added one more to the Guam Daily Post tally. So it's 141 to 52. Wow, got some work to do there, PDN. Before the top of the hour, we were talking about GMH billing practices. And we're doing this in context of this question about what in the world are they negotiating or hammering out? Or how did he put it? Financial parts of the contract that have not been resolved. That's how Edward Burns said, under advice of counsel. He could not provide any information about this. No, I guess not. But I'll tell you what, whatever it is they agree on, you and I are paying. just to let you know, that's why we're talking about it. If we weren't paying it, it wouldn't be any of our business, right? Right. Okay, so that's why I bring this up. And I'm going to bring up something else here. Yesterday's paper, the Guam Daily Post, on page 8 was an article by Oyal, and it's about oversight hearing plan for GMH. And, you know, they're going to have an oversight hearing on GMH in light of the recent breakdown of GMH's elevators and electronic health records system. Okay? Keep that in mind. Also, this coming Friday, the 20th, at 9 a.m., and I was just looking for my copy here in the file, but my file's getting too thick to find little slips of paper so easily. But GMH is having a public hearing on its proposed fee schedule increases and additions. Okay, so keep that in mind as I continue through this topic. Okay, so we'll continue. Before the break, we were talking about what's called billing, balance billing. Now, this came up in an article that was on Weekend Edition Sunday on NPR that was heard late Sunday night, early Monday morning. And it's entitled Understanding Surprise Medical Bills Legislation. So this is how it goes. Maybe this has happened to someone, to you or someone you love. You go to the hospital, you have a procedure done, then comes a nasty surprise, a medical bill for thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, not covered by insurance. Now legislation in the Congress, House and Senate, is inching forward that would roll back that practice, but it's faced a lot of resistance and millions of dollars in advertising and lobbying. And then the article is explaining, it's an interview with Emery Hetman. And it's an interview by Lulu Garcia Navarro. So the surprise bills, the official term is called balance billing. And so this is what Hetman says. In many parts across the country that haven't banned this yet, patients get a bill that is the difference between what their doctor charged and what the insurance paid. And in many cases, that's a huge amount of money, and it's not what people expected to pay. Now, the legislation, how is the legislation designed to help fix that problem? Now, if you think about Congress legislation, now maybe it'll apply to Guam and maybe it won't. But we've got 15 perfectly good people down there that are on our payroll who could also be looking at this. And we have a perfectly good chairwoman of the Committee on Health who could be looking at this if it's on her radar at all. So the federal legislation being considered right now looks at a practice called benchmarking to try to pay these surprise bills. Benchmarking means that an insurance company would pay a provider a fee based on the average of what other providers in the area had been paid for that service. There are a lot of groups that say this is not the right way to go, doctors in particular. They're worried that they're going to end up with depressed fees that make it hard for them to continue to cover their administrative and other costs. Doctors favor a method called arbitration. Arbitration would look like a provider would offer their quote for what they think should be paid for the procedure. The insurance company would offer their quote, what they think they should be paying for the procedure, and a third party would mediate. Okay? And look at the options and say, okay, I select yours. And then the loser pays the fees of arbitration. So basically, it's like a lawyer looking at it and going, oh, okay, I hear the argument, and I'm going to rule in your direction, in your direction. It's just like that administrative law judge we were talking about yesterday as for the workers' comp, right? So this is what's kind of the pushback. Now here's another wrinkle to it. Garcia Navarro says, I was surprised to learn that private equity firms are behind some of this lobbying too. Explain their role. So Hetman says, private equity firms come into the picture because there are at least a few of them that own physician staffing companies. A company hires a doctor, and then the doctor is hired out to hospitals. And then the company will help with the administrative tasks that would take up the doctor's time to run the contracts and to negotiate the paperwork, right? And these groups, these companies that have doctors on their payroll are owned by private equity, like venture capital. Some of the biggest ones are the ones that provide a lot of the emergency room doctors in this country, for instance. So these physician staffing groups are really pushing back against the federal legislation, the bills that would provide for benchmarking, for an average to be paid for these procedures. They're pushing back because the private equity firms are interested in maximizing the payments that they're getting for putting the doctor there. It's a deep-pocketed fight, but it's between people who are, there are people who are pressuring the Congress to get rid of these surprise bills, but the lobbyists are wandering around Capitol Hill, and a lot of doctors are going around Capitol Hill, and so Congress is not willing to take a hard vote on this. Now, I wonder how that plays. This is from an article that was just on Weekend Edition Sunday this past Sunday. Now, I wonder how this plays into what's going on locally. Didn't we just see a doctor that's making got 3 different contracts? So it doesn't necessarily mean that this private equity groups are operating here on Guam. Maybe we have some doctors that are provided by a company that we're paying these premiums to in order to get the staffing. But let me ask you something. Could those investors and those private equity groups be the very doctors? You wouldn't know. I'll come in if you pay the company that I work for to, the fees to bring me in. And it's not a personal services contract, it's a contract with a company for these services, qualified services. We will continue this in just a few moments. Let's go to line 1. Line 1, what's on your mind? Welcome to Tall Tales.
Hello. Hi. This is Vince Akimoto.
Hey, Vince, how are you? Welcome to the show. And how am I doing here?
You're doing pretty good, although I'm hearing some snoring in the background just because I think most people, when they start talking economics, just wonder if it has anything to do with them. But maybe if we could just clarify, you're absolutely right that the cost of care is crazy, and there's a lot of back billing going on that really hurts people because a lot of folks want to pay their bills. And so if they get a bill from GMH or GRMC, very often they'll panic and then they'll go to the bank and try to pay the loan.
Mm-hmm.
And very often we're telling them, you do need to contest it because very often the charges are dumb. They're bad charges. And I think we need to be careful about trying to keep feeding the monster, which is the rising cost of health care, particularly as it regards to hospital charges, because they're indefensible. The kinds of charges that people are seeing for water, for a bedpan, for really ridiculous things, because they're trying to shift costs.
Vince, I know of this because I had to go through the formulary, the request GMH made to the legislature back in 1989. I was working for Madeline, and we had the health committee. And I was the analyst who had to look at this. And I was livid because I also dug down, as an economist, I dug down into the markups. How did you arrive at this number? Give me the cost components that came from the original unit cost.
Well, but you could do that, but then you're going to have to get mad at NASA because that's how you get away with $4,000 toilet seats on the space shuttle.
Yes, and
this is all about cost shifting, and sometimes there's some uniqueness to what goes on to a hospital. Most of the time, it's because other people don't pay their bills, and because the hospital has to make up money in places where they can charge. And then, there's a whole bunch of places where they won't be able to get the charge. But before we get too far into economics, because I'm pretty sure this is better to be done on public radio, can we just talk about?
They don't have such a program, at least locally.
Well, that's the thing. That's what makes the point great, because it's it brings everything together. You don't have to go anywhere else for a conversation that is rather deep, don't you think? This is very analytical and the kind of stuff that makes the legislative folks go crazy. I mean, they're all having a great time, but everybody else is just wondering, what's it got to do with me? And the point is that somebody's going to get sick tonight. Somebody's going to wind up having surgery. Somebody's going to wind up staying there for 10 days, and then when they're going to come out, they're going to have an $18,000 bill. and they're rightfully going to wonder, is this real? I mean, am I supposed to pay this? Because if the insurance company pays for 70% or 80%, you're going to get stuck with a huge bill regardless. And I'm here to tell you, because I want to give solutions. I've met a resolution for the month of September, not to just complain loudly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But keep coming at them, because
gosh. No, well, yeah. Don't worry. I got a lot of sleep last night, so I got plenty of energy. And that's the thing. If they would just start doing things the right way, it would be a lot less work for everybody, right? Because if they think that the people of Guam are going to just simply roll over with the hypocrisy of politics, they're not paying attention. Everybody has the internet now. Everybody knows Dr. Google. And so they have the smart-ass answers to their smart-ass responses. And so I think the politicians should just go transparent, start doing things the right way. Otherwise, they're going to get crushed. I mean, the inevitability of the truth is inherent in public access to information. And, what is it? Knowledge. It's the tree of knowledge all over again. But here's one bit of truth.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who's eligible for Medicare needs to switch over to Medicare like yesterday, and particularly in regards to hospital care, because that's the one thing where this whole sermon you have about back billing, because it's not double billing, it's back billing.
Yes.
It's the phenomenon of people getting charges that they didn't expect because they thought their insurance company took care of it.
Yes.
So the one way for our people on fixed incomes, our retirees particularly, and I know you're too young to worry about this, but those of us that are over the age of 65 and qualify for Medicare need to know that Medicare, as far as I know, and I'm one of the ones following the rules, is you can't back bill Medicare. If you accept a Medicare check, if the hospital accepts Medicare, they cannot go after you for any other charges that they forgot to give to Medicare, or worse yet, that Medicare refused to pay. If Medicare says no, the answer is no. So that's the answer to back billing for some of us. If you're 65 and above and you did your duty and you paid your Social Security and you checked the box which said, I'm going to pay towards my Medicare, then you don't get to be back billed. You've earned that, privilege or right. And Medicare, which is the 500-pound gorilla in healthcare, enforces that. That's where they get a lot of doctors for cheating.
Well, clinics
for cheating.
This is where I'm kind of going with this whole discussion, because it's rolling from one topic to another. And I wanted to get into the formulary, because that formulary is not transparent, and it's full of all kinds of assumptions that prevent it being addressed as a straightforward matter. And we do have the example of Medicare simply saying, this is how much I'm going to pay for this, and that's it.
And the Medicare makes it simple, right? Because, again, if you're sick, the last thing you want to do is worry about going through the itemized bill and going through the formulary, and typically you're doing it like several weeks later. So many times you're at a great disadvantage to challenge a bill, and they're set up inherently for you to get confused and not understand, because a lot of times the lines don't match, right? So It is literally like going through, your bill from Costco or whatever cost you less, and try to make sure you didn't get overcharged for the mayonnaise.
About
400 other items.
But 4 weeks later.
And doing it 4 weeks later. But point being is, I think, if we could be fair to our community, because the majority of people that are getting sick aren't as interested in political processes as you and I, and I think as interested as Therese Terlahi. That oversight hearing should be, and I hope it's held in the hospital, so that the nursing staff and all of the patients and their family members who are stuck there worrying about things can come and attend. But it's inherent upon our representatives, who are the ones who actually approve these formulary changes, right? I mean, if anything above 5% has to go down to the legislature for approval. So if you're wondering who's watching out for the formulary, it's the senators.
Yes.
Which it reminds me of a bad joke, but it's the senators who are responsible for every formulary change since you were there.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I didn't want the legislature to pass it. I was going, you can't stop and make them break it down. make it.
Gone up, yeah, the rates have gone up at least 500%.
Yes.
Since then.
Yes. And they are very happy to announce that they can have that 5% increase without having to go back to the legislature, and they call that a win, when it's actually 5% on top of indefensible factoring.
And again, sometimes though they're bringing new things online. So just because I don't think anybody's completely out to rip off the system, but there are some people that I think are very glad to keep the status quo, which is not very good, right? Let's just admit that the hospital right now is not in a good situation. It is indefensible to continue its expenditures, especially in light of the fact that we have another hospital that's doing a very good job of taking care of other patients. So they should have decreased their costs. They should have met the demands in a more efficient way. Instead, they stupidly kept their payroll exactly the way it was. They stupidly kept raising rates on people that couldn't pay it anyway, and so they wind up with, of course you can't collect. What is it? You can't squeeze water from a rock. And so it means that you, Mr. Taggarty, if you're willing to pay your bill, every time you diligently pay your bill, even if you've gone through it carefully, if you're not Medicare, if you have not enrolled in Medicare and you aren't eligible, you will get back billed unfairly. And if you pay it, you're just feeding the monster.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's against the law not to pay your bill if you agree to go into that hospital and get services. I mean, you took it. I mean, you received the services. And if you're alive enough to get the bill, then you should be grateful, apparently. And that's the thing. If we're going to let people be in that situation where they're going to get, I'm going to say it, screwed every time they go into the hospital, then we're a bad society. Because, the reason, I'm going to say it again, the reason it's being done is because to sustain unnecessary, immoral political hires just because you couldn't say no to one more puri getting a job that he doesn't know how to do and doesn't deserve. And he's robbing from our people so that Mr. Taggarty, when he pays his back bill, is getting screwed. That's not fair.
That's right. We're
not fair.
To be clear here, we are not talking about the quality of health care. We're not talking about medical procedures or qualifications of medical staff.
No, sir. The quality of health care at the Guam Memorial Hospital as a whole, not individually, not each patient there. Don't be scared, because maybe you're going to get great care tonight by the grace of God. But as a whole, as an institution, it has failed to meet the national standard for American hospital. It is not safe to be at GMH today. It has failed. JCO has repeatedly come back and said, you are not safe. CMS has warned them multiple times, you are not safe. So it is a lie to say that what we're doing, it works on Guam. It's okay because everybody else on Guam does the same. The Naval Hospital just got successfully sued for $11.5 million, and they're a good hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The GRMC is routinely sued for millions of dollars. They're a good hospital.
Mm-hmm.
GMH, by the definition of an American hospital, is a bad hospital, and they have good people in there who are sick, and they have good people in there who are working there, trying their best in a bad system that is corrupted by too many political hires. Let them go. Put them at GVB, put them at GITA. I don't care where you put them, but if you don't know what you're going to do with them over at GITA or Revenue and Tax or GVB, what do you think they're doing at GMH? They're killing my patients.
They're drawing a paycheck. Yeah.
They're not just drawing a paycheck. They're taking resources, taking blood, sweat, and tears away from our staff who are trying to save lives. So I'm sorry that we had to disrupt your very academic and Christ-like discussion of the formulary with a little bit of blood, red-blooded reality. If we don't fix this cost issue, people are going to die. Just like if they don't fix that electrical panel, right? Remember, It was today. Today's the anniversary of the day that Benita Manglonia went out and told the people of Guam that if you don't give GMH all the money it needs, then people are going to die because the electrical panel there is broken. And what a shame it is on the legislature for not giving them the money to fix the electrical panel. So they gave them the money. They raised the tax, right? Everything happened according to the way the people at the GMH administration said it needed to be done. And trust me, the majority of those people are still there drawing down very big salaries.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of those administrators are still there, right?
Oh, yeah. It's
the electrical panel is still broken.
Yes.
The electrical panel is still broken, and there have been power outages.
Mm-hmm.
So this formulary discussion is not dry. It is not academic. And it is not nearly an intellectual masturbation exercise. This is the real deal.
That's why I bring it up. And I'm glad that you're putting the color on it, because it's dry, it's economics, it's finance, it's
exciting.
pricing.
It's wonderful. All the people in the Fed, all the people in the World Bank, they love this. But the people that are driving around the road, they can't believe we're talking about mental masturbation as it regards to the formulary. That's exactly what it is. You're just wasting your sperm. Can we fix this now, because people are dying?
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up this whole thing about the formulary is because there are ways to save. They need to move this whole medical records and billing into the 21st century. They've had a good 15, 20 years to do it with HIPAA, and they haven't, and unless it's like, what, 28 million.
$20 million to do it all in 1 week. Kind of like how we do our budget. Apparently, it all gets compressed into several short days. Are you going to give? $20 million. That's more than the budget for the fire department.
Yeah, and they want it.
That's $20 million to get in. You know how it is with all these IT guys. They get you on the hook for 5 years. So it's $20 million to get in. It's $18 million a year to stay in.
And that's why that's
a $20 million one-time investment, and you never have to upgrade or maintain or bring the vendor in to make adjustments, to customize it. No, this is berserkus. We should go to Huawei, since we're American Asia, and Huawei can give us a system for $2 million, and they'll service it for free.
But that's not what's being presented to the legislature or the people of Guam. And would we want to have a system that's going to put in the how many thousands of items in the formulary? Why don't they just adopt a simpler formulary, and with the structure that allows for the new technology and the new procedures and the new.
How about a flat tax? Why don't we just do a flat income tax too? I mean, there's all kinds of brilliant solutions, but really it comes down to the political will. If you can't streamline your payroll this weekend, right? So that you can make payroll next weekend. Remember, it's the end of the fiscal year, so I'm pretty sure there's no money. There's like no money in the coffer, so it's all smoke and mirrors. It's a great thing that Section 30 money came in. It's going to save payroll for the next week. but the big deal is, sir, is that this whole idea that we have to spend $20 million on a electronic medical record system or any kind of IT investment, and it's going to make everything better if we just think good thoughts. I remember a program called Agupa and Oracle and all that other crap we spent money on when you were in the legislature.
Yes, yes. The same.
How about we not do that again?
It's the same thing coming down the pike. And that's why I wanted to start out with the talk about the formulary, because it is so 1980s. And so, and this is where
those are the good days. We had really good, the kids like that music better now. The 80s.
But we don't want to go back to that technology or that method of governance or the method of getting the public's work done at today's prices.
I would only argue one thing is that apparently we're using an AS400, which predates the 1980s to do a lot of Guam work, right? So the AS400 has been criticized as being archaic, and no one can believe that we're actually doing a lot of work on the AS400. Guess what? The AS400 works. The AS400 does what it needs to do. And so I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy, right? I still like to eat chickens that were growing out in the backyard because they taste better. And, that's the thing. They're not as easy to get. I like coconuts that grow on trees. I'd rather have coconut water that comes from a coconut rather than a can. So I'm not too in love with being super modern just so I can get addicted to IT that's too expensive. But, we will have to upgrade GMH's IT system, but why don't we upgrade its soul first? Why don't we upgrade its ethic, its reason for being? It needs to have, a why, and the why should be you, not them. It shouldn't be so that we fulfill the wet dreams of politicians or political hacks who want to give somebody a $20 million contract so they'll have a job when this administration retires. There's too much sluttiness going on at GMH right now. We need that to stop. And so I'm going to pray and I'm going to wait for a soul to emerge before I give them $20 million. Because Agupa and Oracle, those are apparently really good ideas too. I hope they eventually start paying off, because last I checked, we were cheated. The people of Guam were cheated.
Yes, and because we were cheated, it's really easy to try to throw that same curveball at us.
Yep. So strike three, you're out. So how about we hit a home run instead, and we give GMH, a new why, and that's you. You, the patient, you, the families of Guam, you, the people that need to get health care there because you can't afford GRMC. We think GMH is expensive and they back bill high. It's $5,000 a day to go to GRMC. GMH is only $2,800 a day. So, if you do the averaging thing that you were talking about, what is it? That averaging thing?
Yes.
Your bill will be higher.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
On Guam. Because if you do it in the States, maybe the averages would work out in your favor, but you don't want to do the averages if you're a GMH patient. You're going to pay more.
In fact, that's one of the points I wanted to get to, is that under the logic that was in the article, in the States, it would depress the resulting fees. But on Guam, because of the lack of competition, it would increase them.
Right. So I would rather go towards some sort of flat fee so everybody knows what they're getting when they go in. And I would rather go for, I'm not advocating Medicare for all, although the guys from Berkshire Hathaway are advocating Medicare for all, and they're Republicans. I'm thinking that Medicare has solved the problem, at least for itself and its patients, and there's a lot of people out there who don't have their Medicare activated. I don't know why. This is a call to say, if you are supposed to have Medicare, get Medicare, because they can't backbill you if you use your Medicare.
Well, thank you so much for calling in this afternoon. You've really livened me up better than a cup of coffee. and you saved everyone from the dismal science of economics.
25 more minutes to go over the formulary.
Well, thank you. No. I'll move it on. I'll move it on to something else. But thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Call again. Okay, bye. Dr. Vince Akimoto, and you can read him in the paper when he waxes poetic there, and you just heard him here on Tall Tales. Let's take a break, Real Joe, and we'll come right back with more after this.
Are you ready for some football? The Ray Gibson Show has got your NFL fix every Friday on Sports with Blake. Get the latest updates as Blake and Mike break down the upcoming action. Get your game on with the boys on the hotline, 888-TALK, or sound off on Facebook Live at thepoint.gu. League members get a chance to win some awesome prizes that get you through the NFL season. The NFL Picks on the Ray Gibson Show is brought to you by Current Guam, with special thanks to GTA.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Question: are you task-oriented or people-oriented? Which is best? That is, best for you and best for your team. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll look at the pros and cons of each.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Welcome back to Tall Tales. It's, I got about 22 minutes to go here, and I see on line one, Ken, welcome.
Hey, Daryl, this is Ken.
Yes, I know. I see your number there. Yeah. So what do you think?
Well, it goes back to the statements I was making back in 2017 and 18 about the need to bring in a receiver to run the hospital, because contrary to the governor's assertion that she was going to put well-qualified people in the hospital that were going to turn things around, all we're seeing is more of the same. And, building on Vince's call earlier, I'm sitting here with a FOIA that documents 144 people hired since January.
My goodness, that's like an employment agency.
Yeah, really. And then I'm sitting here going through the bills from January, and I'm going to compare them to the bills from August. But I'm seeing a lot of red flags. But it comes down to this: we don't have the political will as a people to demand that our elected officials put the people first. Because if we had, this thing could have been taken care of years ago. And all we're seeing is the same thing. We're seeing that revolving door of political appointees walking into Guam Memorial Hospital with a political agenda instead of a community agenda. And I think 144 hires in 6 months pretty much confirms that. I mean, we were overstaffed as it was to begin with, but now to just ramp up. Now, granted, there's been some transitions, but still, 144 people. And we're talking about a hospital that's overstaffed to begin with. That's the reason they can't fix anything, because their payroll's too large.
Well, also because the billings are obscured, the amounts that they bill, even if they fall short, they'll just take the shortfall and go to the legislature and say, unless you give this to us, we're short. And that they keep trotting that out no matter what the deal. But they have no capital equipment plan. They have no strategic plan for the build out of medical services. They have no. It's all ad hoc. It's all crisis
we're
management.
Doing it right now with this desperate cry for a new main electrical panel. Now, I FOIA'd the documents on that panel, and surprise, surprise, the survey where they got that $6 million, it was from a vendor. A vendor came in and said it's going to cost us $6 million to replace this panel. And then when GPA came in and they shut down the electric for a day, ran it on the generator. They brought their engineers in, and what did they discover? That some of the terminals were corroded and needed cleaning. And so they cleaned the terminals that needed cleaning. But other than that, the panel's fine. That was in 2016. And then in 2019, one of the first announcements coming out of GMH under the new administration is we need $11 million to replace the panel. And when I FOIA'd the documents, there's nothing there to justify it. There's no reports, there's no analysis, there's no studies or anything. It's just a quote from a vendor.
One of the reasons why I wanted
to the pork barrel politics.
One of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up at all on this program is because I'm hoping that with this oversight hearing planned, that maybe, just maybe, the current chair of the Health Committee could start actually doing the hard work of oversight from the legislature on behalf of the people of Guam, instead of allowing the insiders and the governor, because it's been decided in court that it's an organic responsibility that the governor has purview over health. But it's supposed to have oversight by the legislature so that it knows that the amounts that are being requested of it are solid. And we need to know, because we put those senators in there to act on our behalf. And if they're sleeping at the switch, well, then we're just going to have another couple of years of this. And there's no reason for it. The time to do the work is now.
Yeah, and they've wasted 9 months of the 35th legislature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really sad to think that legalizing gambling at the casino has gotten more attention from the legislature. I mean, there were 3 or 4 hearings and, bills passed. And And then at the end of the day, we discover that, well, the gambling didn't work, the attendance didn't go up, and now the taxpayers in Guam are going to be on the hook for $200,000 shortfall between revenues and expenses of the 75th Liberation Day.
Yeah, but they're ready for next year because they got Talina's bill repealed. Finally.
Well, we still got some time to work on that as well. But it goes back to the fact that the board of directors for Guam Memorial Hospital is a waste of time, because basically what we have there is a group of people who, whenever anything comes up, the first response is, let's check with the front office.
Mm-hmm.
What are they there for anyway? If they're not going to do the hard work and do the hard decisions. I mean, they didn't do an executive search. They just ad loop sent over a person and said, I have blessed this person, make her the CEO. Never mind, she doesn't have the experience or qualifications. I have sent her over, therefore, make her the boss. And the people of Guam were cheated, because for a while there, for the first 7 months of the year, we had two. We had Peter John and Lillian.
Yeah.
So that was a $500,000 payroll just between the two of them. And for $500,000, we could have hired the CEO of Queens Medical Center, who took Queens from a $1 billion a year operation to a $5 billion a year operation. And that's the part that frustrates me, because we're paying Bay Area salaries for people that have, West Pecos, Texas skill levels.
Yeah, or only local experience.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way we can justify paying somebody on Guam who has never run a 100, 200, 300, or 1,000-bed hospital the same salary that a guy who runs a 1,000-bed hospital with 1,000 doctors on staff.
Mm-hmm. Staff. Yeah.
On staff, and 3,000 nurses on staff, and 5 facilities around the state
that are all accredited.
And we're paying that money, that level of money, and we're getting someone that instead of someone that knows how to drive a Ferrari in a Le Mans race or something like that, we're getting somebody that knows how to get on a tricycle, provided it has training wheels. So that's the problem we have. It's not that we couldn't attract good people, or that we probably have good people here, but a lot of the good people I talk to don't want to have anything to do with government of Guam, just for the reason we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, when we look at the fact that this is the only public hospital, it's the only emergency room that is mandated to take anybody. And I mean, already, GRMC, they've closed some of their specialty clinics. They closed their maternity. They closed their urgent care.
Mm-hmm. They closed their Yeah.
And we know, because there's been a couple of cases where GRMC wouldn't take people that they thought were high risk and send them to Guam Memorial. So we need to make sure that Guam Memorial is the best possible Guam Memorial it can be, but it starts at the top, and that starts with putting someone in there with competence.
And who's going to go through and take out the fat that's not necessary to run a hospital, and use those funds for, to get the one of the tasks that needs to be done, in my opinion, is they need some credibility as to exactly what the priorities are and how they're going to achieve it, and have solid numbers to back it up.
Well, we're not going to see that out of this administration, because they sent 2 people to London at a cost of $50,000 to attend a seminar in London that they could have attended in San Diego for about $8,000. Or they could have taken the online course for less than $1,000. But no, they needed to go to London for 6 days at a cost to taxpayers of nearly $50,000. See, these are the kinds of decisions that they're making at GMH. And, I mean, it gets even more bizarre because, you know, I tried to pay for my FOIA request.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up having to go to the administrator's office and raise just a little bit of hell because nobody could take my check because the FOIA request, they sent me an invoice, but the invoice wasn't in the system at any of the cashiers. So one cashier sent me to a different cashier, and the different cashier sent me back to the first cashier. So that's when I went to Lillian's office and handed them a check.
Well, that makes me wonder whether there are other invoices they're putting out that are not in the system. So when they are paid, the money drops into a hole.
Well, when I was listening to you talk about your experience, it reminded me, I went to the emergency room back in 2008, 2009 for a dog bite. And when they sent me my bill, they included all kinds of EKGs and all this other stuff that I never had.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went in there and raised hell about it. And guess what? Apparently my father in 1992 went to the emergency room for shortness of breath and chest pains in 92. And in 2008, they're trying to stick me with the bill.
Mm-hmm. I used to work on medical records, and it was two people with the same or similar name, and they would pull a file, and they go, hey, here he is again, and there's an outstanding bill. And so I was the guy that would have to go through those files and try to clean them up and distinguish the patients if possible with updated indexing. You want to hang on, Ken? I got to take a break here.
Sure.
Okay, we'll be right back with Ken after this short break.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Looking to relocate your business? Prime Space is available at the Camacho Landmark Center at the intersection of Marine Corps Drive and Chalon San Antonio, next to Personal Finance Center. Located in central Tamuning, close to the airport, hotels, major shopping, restaurants, financial institutions, the hospital, clinics, schools, and GovGuam and federal agencies. Your business can experience the benefits of this first-class commercial facility. Join other successful Guam businesses who have moved to this modern multi-purpose commercial center. Call Carlos Camacho, 300-7744 for more information.
And welcome back to Tall Tales. We've got about another 7 minutes or so to go here. I've got Ken Leon Guerrero on the line, and we're just still talking about GMH. It's a good subject, and it's one that we need to understand better as people who are demanding of our government that it do the work that we elected them to do.
Yeah, I mean, GMH was further hamstrung by this legislature when they passed Bill 30, which mandated that Guam Regional Medical Center be included in any Guam Memorial Hospital plan. So we haven't seen what the cost of the hospital insurance is going to be. And I think that's concerning because we have all these conversations that, you know, that we selected it because it was the most economical plan for government in Guam. How do we know it's the most economical plan when they don't even know how much it's going to cost?
Well, it's nice to know that they left a bunch of negotiating items until after they decided.
Well, it's going to be interesting because tomorrow's my deadline for my FOIA on the contract. I haven't gotten a request for an extension, and I haven't gotten anything from Department of Administration yet. So we're hearing that their attorneys are telling them they can't discuss it, but I haven't seen anything to that effect. But it goes back to, once again, we have a situation where this administration is writing large checks and signing them without knowing what the amount is going to be put in that little pay line. You know, pay this amount.
Yes.
And that's where I'm very concerned, because we know that the senators and the governor are not going to adjust the employee share up and the government share down in an effort to spare taxpayers any rude shocks. So once we see what that final number is, then that's when we're going to have an idea about whether or not this is going to be a tipping point event on the debt bomb. Because, you know, we still have that $100 million deficit hanging over our heads. We have $200 million a year in debt service that we're paying now for all the bonds and debts that government Guam owes. So, you know, how much more can we expect taxpayers to carry?
Well, there are two items I really want to talk with you in the future, so you're going to have to call back because we don't have time to talk about this today. One is, there was an article in today's paper about Representative Raul Grijalva of Arizona, who is going to present an amendment to PROMESA to bring in some other features and soften it and update it a bit. And so we're going to talk about that. Another thing I want to ask you about is, it kind of goes along with your recent article in PDN entitled "Descending to the 7 Levels of Hell."
Financial hell.
Yeah, there is an article by Eugene Stoyl, who is a co-founder of the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center, who wrote, "Congress is supposed to decide how the U.S. spends money. Soon it won't be able to." And it's talking about the share of revenues, federal revenues, that are already spoken for by past budgets, and about the parallel to that here.
Yeah, I read that.
Yes, 11%.
Congress has 11% discretionary spending. But at the rate we're going, it is estimated that by 2024, the debt service on the U.S. debt, based on the recent escalations, 2 years of back-to-back trillion-dollar increases. We've now gone from 19 trillion to 21 trillion, and this next budget is going to be 1.4 trillion deficit.
Yes, but what is it for Guam? What's the percentage for Guam that's the discretionary amount? Because that you see at the legislature, this is where all of the activity, they're scurrying around all over the edges. You see lots of activity on the edges, but you don't see anything about the $950 million base of it.
That is one of the things that I will FOIA on for our next conversation, payroll costs, because they don't break it out in their budgets. They just present a dollar figure, and they don't on the OFB. I haven't seen where all the different departments are submitting their line items. What they're submitting is just like a cover sheet that says, for FY 2020, we are requesting X amount.
Oh, I've seen those budget requests are detailed by position and by function.
I haven't found them yet. I've requested them from OFB, but they haven't given them to me yet.
Yeah, you need to read those digests.
We're going to find out.
Yeah.
Because we know right now that for government of Guam itself, we get between income tax and business gross receipts tax, we get $500 million. And $100 million of that is earmarked for debt service. So $1 out of $5 already coming in goes to debt service.
Well,
what we need to find out is how much goes to payroll.
Let's go ahead and we're going to pick it up. One of these days, we're going to pick it up right here Thank you, Ken, for calling in and chiming in on GMH. I really appreciate the comments. But it's time to go, so we'll see you around the corner. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye. It's 5:59 and time to make way for more fine programming from the Fox Radio Network here on The Point. I'm Darrell Taggarty. I'll be back at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you so much for tuning in. And be sure to tune in for Ray Gibson tomorrow morning at 6. Have a good evening, everyone.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.